Hello. I'd like to welcome you now to session number 18, where we will continue at the point where we left off in session 17. Now, the great majority of citizens who align themselves with certain politicians or parties, those who use divisive and unfruitful policies, these same citizens usually profess to believe in all those things just mentioned above, about the needs of the less fortunate, perhaps of those who truly do. Hopefully, most or all of them will realign their thinking to follow those politicians who have more inclusive policies. Policies that consider the needs of all the people and that don't try to divide us. Although I'm not trying to say that there are no differences between the political parties, in my observations, regardless of which party is in power, they may voice policies that seem different, but they, meaning both political parties, essentially seem, over the years, to have had the same results. No universal health care freely available to all those who need it. No higher education freely available to all those who need it. No solutions to the homeless problem. No decent minimum wage. A severe lack of good-paying jobs, just to mention a few reasons from my observations and conclusions. They, meaning those of both political parties, will announce and begin projects supposedly designed to help such problems with great fanfare. But the politicians from both sides will almost always weaken the legislation and or underfund such projects so significantly to the point that very little, if anything, worthwhile gets accomplished. Nevertheless, they want it to at least appear to the public that they're doing their best to make a positive difference, or they will approach it in a way that will significantly favor the most affluent and wealthy constituency, or perhaps both. In addition, those who are conservative usually prefer to privatize government functions so some corporation can make a profit from it by overcharging the taxpayers and then cutting back later on services in order to make even higher profits. There have been efforts in the past to privatize the country's air traffic control system. They even privatized the new drug benefit in Medicare. In fact, it was set up so that Medicare was not even allowed to negotiate with the drug companies in order to try to save on the cost of drugs. What does that sound like to you? In addition, like the two wars and the tax cut, there was no provision made in the legislation to provide funding to pay for the projects. As a result, in the case of Part D of Medicare, this approach would give as much as possible of the project to private business interests. In theory, there should be nothing wrong with privatization, but in reality there are at least two big reasons why that's not always the best approach. The first reason is that when privatization is there, the bottom line must, by necessity, become the biggest priority, and not the product or service being provided. And, more importantly, not the people to whom the product or service is being provided. In addition, for the corporate world, the bottom line must always continue to improve. So there's always the incentive to either raise prices, reduce the labor costs by somehow lowering the wages on existing employees, by using robotics, or even by using the labor in another country where labor costs are much cheaper. And we all know the tragic results of that in the United States. Another option that's often used is to cheapen the product or reduce the service, or to do all the above. By design, it's the nature of corporations that they and their upper management have no choice except to follow the creed that requires them to bow down and worship at the altar of the almighty dollar. Even the word capital, the foundation or root of the term capitalism, means money. And if capital means money, then we literally live under a system of moneyism. How does that make you feel about the system under which we live? a system described as the greatest in the world. Remember who told us that the love of money is the root of all evil. And he also told us that we cannot serve two masters, both God and mammon. Are you beginning to see the light just a little bit? Any talk about the possibility of future privatization, even partial privatization for other Medicare benefits or for Social Security or for Medicaid, should raise a red flag for anyone who in years past happily changed to an HMO for their health insurance because they were told that it would be so much better for them. We all know what has since happened. A great many people have been deprived of crucial medical treatment because it might unfavorably affect the bottom line, which is always, and I stress the word always, the first priority with the corporate structure. A structure which has such a disproportionately high level of influence in the United States and around the world. You should also know that school vouchers can be, and probably are in many instances, being used as a veiled way of having the taxpayers help pay for the private education of children whose parents perhaps don't want them to have to go to public school with the average student. Or perhaps they don't want them to go to public schools with minorities. So they send them to private, often religious schools. Now don't misunderstand. No one's questioning the right of citizens to send their children to a private school, whether or not the reasons have to do with religious beliefs. There is something wrong, however, when the taxpayers are being told to pay part of the bill, and when those lost funds threaten, as this does, to hurt the public school system, taking away needed funds and thereby making the public school system less effective. I want to thank you for watching. In session number 19, we'll continue our discussion. Thank you again for watching.